Hi everyone, this is Taylor and Gray. We're going to go ahead and get started just in a couple minutes. If you can hear me okay, will you raise your hand? Okay, great. I'm seeing some folks raise their hand. I appreciate that. So it sounds like y'all can hear me. We're just going to give a couple minutes and get started at about 1:03, just in case anyone's joining a little late. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we jump in, I'm going to ask that if you have your phone unmuted, that you please go ahead and mute your phone just in case there's any background noise. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to talk about the 2018-2019 Performance Profile release. And today we're going to go through this agenda. So first we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the Louisiana Early Childhood Vision and the implementation of Act 3 to date. Then we're going to go into some slides that discuss what the performance profile release will look and feel like this year. Then we'll dig into some statewide data trends. And then we'll end with some slides discussing how we can continue to support improvement and updates and next steps for lead agencies and sites. I'm going to save some time at the end for questions, but if you have a question while I'm going through the presentation, just type it into the chat box and we'll try to get to it in real time as well. All right, I know that everyone has likely seen this Louisiana Vision slide, but I do just want to ground us in what our goal is. So our goal is that every child have the set of experiences that will prepare them to enter kindergarten ready. And the vision to accomplish that lofty goal is articulated in these 4 boxes. So first, we expect that there are shared high standards for what children should learn and what excellent teaching looks like in classrooms across the state. We expect that teachers are excellent at interacting with children and guiding learning, and they're supported to become excellent. We expect that expectations for health, safety, and learning are consistent with adequate funding levels for programs that serve children well. And we expect that families can easily enroll and they have the tools they need to choose the best options for their children. As you all know, we are now several years into the implementation of Act 3. I just want to include this timeline slide because I think it shows us how far we've come since 2012. So as a result of the passage of Act 3 in 2012, 13 original early childhood community network pilots launched in the 2013-2014 school year. Over the course of the next couple of years, more and more community networks got on board until 2015-16, when all communities across the state established a community network with a lead agency at the helm that was coordinating enrollment, coordinating observations, and also conducting other administrative duties for the community network. Following that year, performance profiles were issued based on a learning year, and then we've continued to align supports and incentives and consequences to those new performance profiles since then. I just want to highlight that where we are now in the fall of 2019, we have a couple new announcements, which I hope will not come as a surprise to you. This year, with the 2018-2019 launch of the performance profiles, sites will be recognized as high proficient for the first time. And then, of course, this year, all infant classrooms are being observed for a practice year. And then beginning in the fall of 2020, which is not shown on this timeline, all infant classrooms will be fully incorporated into the Unified Quality Rating System. We're getting a little bit of background noise. So again, I'm just going to ask folks to mute their phones if they're not already muted. All right, so overall, this has been an incredibly successful year, and we have a considerable amount to celebrate. So at a very high level, in the 2018-2019 school year, more than 15,000 observations were conducted across 1,600 or so sites in 5,500 classrooms, and all said and done, that amounts to more than 1 million minutes of care and education observed. As I already mentioned, this is the first year that sites that score in the range of 5.25 to 5.99 will be recognized as high proficient. This year, 38% of sites across the state will be rated as high proficient. And then when we look at the data, basically every way we cut the data, there's improvement across the board. So nearly 7% more sites this year will be proficient or above compared to last year. The average score for each dimension and each domain has improved. And the average score for each program type, so that includes Head Start, childcare, and school-based pre-K, improved as well. And then, of course, we also know that even though we've seen so much improvement in quality, there are still far too few children who can access publicly funded high-quality programs. So just as a bit of background, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what it is that we mean when we talk about classroom quality. So the way that we measure classroom quality in Louisiana is based on observations conducted with the CLASS tool. And the CLASS tool is an observation-based tool that's used in pre-K classrooms, toddler classrooms, and beginning this year in all infant classrooms. But across those three age groups, the expectations that the tool measures are the same. So we're looking for warm, positive environments with trusting relationships. We're looking for classrooms that are organized, that are conducive to high quality experiences and interactions. And then we're looking for children to be supported to learn concepts, develop language, and connect ideas through dialogue and play. So performance profiles that are based on this class observation system contain two components. So the first component is the performance rating, which is based directly on class observations conducted at that site. But every site in the state also has informational metrics reported on their performance profile as well. The informational metrics contain information about the site's use of best practices. So this includes the quality of the curriculum, the percent of children that are being assessed using TS goals, and credentials for teachers. crosswalk between the class score range, the performance ratings, and the star ratings that are used for tax credits and bonus payments. So as you can see here on this slide, that 5.25 to 5.99 range is now recognized as high proficient, and that's aligned to the 4-star rating that has previously been in use. The incentives and consequences that are aligned to this rating scale include tax credits and bonus payments for child care centers that score higher on class, and programs that score low, below 3.75, are now required to participate in a year-long site improvement planning process. And sites that score very low in that unsatisfactory category for 2 years in any 3-year period may lose Type 3 licensure and public funding. Now I'm going to pass it over to Gray, who's going to walk us through the next few slides.
Okay, hey everybody. So I know most of you guys are familiar with the school and Center Finder, but we wanted to do just a brief overview of its functionality. And these slides may also be useful to you later on with like a new site that may be opening up, or if you have parents or community members that want to know a little bit more about it. So as you guys know, all the data that you were going to be talking about today and all the good data that you guys have helped collect with observations winds up in a performance profile that is published online. What you're looking at here is the front page of the School Finder. Families and providers, really anyone who has access to the link, can use this search feature to find a performance profile for a particular site in their network. It also has a map function. So if they would rather look at centers or sites that are just in a general area around them, they're welcome to do so. They can apply filters to this map and sort it by either age group or site type. And then of course it's got all of the distance and the information about each of these sites along the right-hand side of the screen. This is an example of a performance profile. Once you click on a site, what it's going to look like. So it's going to tell you what ages are served, where is it, what type of site is it, its star rating, information about before and after care, the director, hours, all the good stuff that anyone would need to know about it. And if you click on the second tab here, so this is the About Our School tab. If you click on the Academic Performance tab, you'll see their rating along with their score and some more information. So this example site is rated high proficient. That corresponds in this case to a 5.94. It tells you there below the different ranges for each of the ratings so that families and users can do some comparisons. One thing that we want to kind of let everybody know about is this year, beginning this year, there will be downloadable and printable one-page site profile PDFs that you can get off of this site. And those will be retroactively added as well to previous years. I know I've worked with some of you guys because there's kind of a gap there on a downloadable file. So beginning with 1819, those will be available, and then we're going to be rolling out previous year PDFs for all the other sites. And then of course, moving forward, this will become standard. If you scroll down that page a little bit, of course, you're going to see the informational metrics as well as information. Well, it's all informational metrics, but you're going to see things about the assessment that gets used, as well as teacher degrees and certification information. This, of course, is all of the stuff that we worked to certify during data certification. So this is what this information winds up looking like for each site. Okay, so that's the School and Center Finder. Like I said, pretty straightforward. Now we want to go in and look at statewide results for everyone. For those of you guys that were in attendance at the collaboratives, a lot of this will look somewhat familiar, but we're excited today. It will be, your official data. There won't be any more preliminary changes. And so let's dive right in. So overall, we're seeing a lot of good improvement. This year, 127 sites, or about 7% of all sites, achieved proficient or above in this 18-19 year, which represents a ton of kids that are receiving a lot of high quality care and education than in previous years and decades. The graph right here, I won't go into it a whole lot, but you'll see that 7% of sites are excellent, and almost a full 80% of sites are either proficient or high proficient, which means that we've just got like a ton of kids that are in some really good, that are receiving some really good care across the state. We're really excited about that. You'll also notice that approaching proficient has dropped each year as more and more sites move into the proficient, high proficient, and excellent ratings. And even though it across the board is pretty small, unsatisfactory sites have also decreased each year. If we look at that data by domain, so obviously what you're looking at here are pre-K domains on the left and then toddler domains on the right. We've also seen improvement across the board as well as overall in each of these domains. Some have increased more than others in certain years, but everything has trended northward, which is always great to see. And I want to especially highlight a considerable amount of growth in engaged support for learning, the far right-hand corner. That's like a full 0.15, which is like really good. And it's also a domain that historically observations have seen kind of lower. So it's really exciting to see growth in an area where people have struggled in years past. So the next graph that we're going to look at is across program types, but we kind of wanted to be upfront about our methodology here. So you're going to see how our school's doing, how our early Head Starts or Head Start centers doing, and then how our child care centers doing. I'm just kind of going to go through this slowly. You can always revisit this this slide if you want to look back on how we get to each category. But when we say a school, we're talking about public and non-public schools. So non-public schools in this case being NSCCD schools, and any Head Start program that is located in a school, right? So this does not include school-based classrooms that are located in a child care or a Head Start center. For early Head Start and for Head Start, these are Type 3 centers who serve children entirely or almost entirely funded, of course, through Head Start. This does not include partnerships between early Head Start and child care centers or Head Start programs that are in school buildings. And then lastly, child care centers for this graph are defined as Type 3 centers that serve children through a variety of sources of funding. This may include CCAP, it may be private pay in the CCD, LA4, or early Head Start as well. When we say a child care center, we're not talking about schools or Head Starts that offer CCAP before and after care, and we're not talking about schools that have licensed classrooms to serve 3-year-olds. So like I said, a lot of that's a bit of a mouthful. You will have these slides, and you can always come back and look at this graph a little bit, or this table a little bit more. But for the purposes of this graph, this is how we are defining each. And we're excited to say that there is also growth for each of these program types. Especially this year for childcare, that is a full 0.18 increase, which is a lot. And for child cares, we've historically seen a bit of a gap. When you look at the 2015-2016 year data, you'll see that child care and schools are almost a full point apart overall. And now we're seeing that gap narrow to just under a half point. So while schools are still improving, child care centers are closing that gap, and we're excited about that. As Taylor's already mentioned, this is the first year where sites and networks will be using the high proficient rating. And we kind of wanted to just do a little overview of what implications that has had for the distribution of ratings. So for this year, originally there would have been, in this case, 78% of sites that are just rated proficient. But now with the high proficient, we've got 38% of sites that are going to be rated high proficient. So it's almost a perfect split, but we're excited to be distinguishing between centers that are rather sites that are on the upper end of that older proficient band, and recognizing a higher score for those sites. But like I said, it's almost a perfect split, and we're looking forward to seeing how that distribution continues over the next couple of years. Additionally, this graph is telling, it looks like it's telling somewhat of a different story, but you'll see that we've got about a total of 601 sites overall that actually did decline. Many more sites improved than did decline, but we've got a distribution here, a bit like a U, which we would expect, with 884 sites that have improved. I just want to call to your attention that both on the decline and on the improvement, most of them are falling within a very small margin of decline and improvement. So these have been very incremental changes. We're getting a little bit of feedback on the audio. Okay, it's gone now. Thank you. So at any rate, a lot of these changes are happening in incremental ways. But we are excited about a full 60 sites that improve by 1 point or more. You'll see that at the far right. That's a considerable amount of growth, and that is compared to 16 sites that declined by the same amount. So overall, we're seeing everything kind of move, like I said, northward, which is what you want to see. Okay, some of that growth is likely attributable, or definitely attributable, to our site improvement planning process. So for those that are not as familiar with the background on this, beginning last year, around this time last year, low performing sites that scored below or at or below a 3.75 were mandated to be a part of our early childhood site improvement planning process. Without going into a ton of details, these site directors were working closely with our field support consultants and the R&Rs to develop different plans, to make targeted improvements in their teaching, to up their curriculum, and of course get mental health consultations as well. It looked a little bit different for each site, but across the board, it really was just sort of like doubling down on the things that we know work. And it has been a remark. We've had some really great results. 95% of sites that participated this year improved. And we're comparing those to sites that were also ranked approaching proficient, but were not quite low enough to be mandated to be a part of the improvement planning process. And sites that were in the same rating but didn't participate, actually only about 33% of those sites improved. So we feel really good about what this is capable of doing for a site that wants to kind of get their score up. And maybe even more exciting is that almost half of the sites that participated grew by a point or more, which is just an astounding amount of growth. So we're looking forward to see how we can make these resources more available to other sites that want to participate, and also just refining this process so that we can get sites to improve even more. So similar looking graph to the graph that we looked at just previously, but this is just for site improvement planning. You'll notice in this case, the decline and improve is not at all evenly distributed. It's overwhelmingly on the improvement side. So in this, you kind of have like if you want to imagine a curve, you've got a curve that is kind of going up like a roller coaster. Whereas if I go back and look at this, you have that classic upside down U. Obviously, this is a smaller group of sites, but we're really encouraged by what these charts are showing, which is that if we put sites through a process that is intensive and supportive, growth is entirely possible. All right. As we kind of move toward the end of the readout of results, we want to give you a little overview of what honor roll results we have for 2018-2019. Overall, there's 400 sites across 52 networks that are being recognized in some form or fashion. 111 sites were on the Excellence honor roll, which is awesome. 214 sites are on the Birth to 3 honor roll, which is reflecting the really high quality scores and care for our youngest learners. And then lastly, 57 sites actually distributed are being recognized for top gains, and they demonstrated more than 1 point of growth on the class observation scale, which, as we've already talked about, is a considerable amount of growth. So we're really proud of these sites. Of course, you'll be getting a breakdown of those. I think we actually already have a breakdown of those in your FTP. If you have any trouble accessing any of that, please just let the team know. But those sites are now available to you, and we will be mailing out.
We're hoping to have the honor roll certificates this year ready for the collaboratives that begin next Wednesday, so that when we meet you at the collaboratives, we can actually hand those honor roll certificates directly to you so that we can get them to site sooner rather than later.
Cool. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, I forgot about that. So you'll have them in hand, so there won't have to be any issues with the mail this time. If you have any questions about the honor roll, just let one of us know. Okay, now I want to look really briefly at how networks are doing overall. So 95% across the state, networks are doing really well. For the first time ever, in fact, all the community networks scored either proficient or a high proficient, which is that 4.66 to 5.95 band, which we're really excited about. Obviously, there's still some room to grow, and you guys know that, but if the worst we're doing is proficient, then we have a lot to be proud of. From last year, 43 networks increased their overall score, which is exciting. Again, even though we're doing well with proficient or high proficient, the fact that the vast majority of networks are growing each year is really encouraging. 3 networks moved from approaching proficient to proficient, and then 9 networks moved from proficient to high proficient. So we have some standout networks that are really improving from where they were just last year. And overall, just shy of half of all the networks, 29, are now being recognized as high proficient. So we're really excited about what this means for your communities and obviously the hard work that you guys are doing with your sites and teachers in those sites. We know that you guys put in a considerable amount of effort on this, and it's really showing. Our state average for 18-19 was a 5.14. A full 42 networks are actually above that, and then about 23 are being scored below the 5.14 state average. So this is, of course, not observation data. This is the informational metrics that we looked at towards the beginning of the presentation. But overall, we've got, kind of some different results here. So the vast majority of sites at this point have now attained a 3-star, high quality curriculum, which is a big win. We're really excited about that. Almost 100% of sites are using a 3-star rated curriculum. All right. 78% of sites have a 3-star assessment rating. 58% of sites are at that 3-star classroom ratio, and then 61, almost 2/3 of all teachers are have an LA certification. Now, obviously, there's some different results as you look by program type. So schools are hitting, you know, really high, above 90% on each of these, which is great. But we know the context is a little bit different in the average school compared to the average childcare, where we're seeing a little bit more variability. These things are improving. We know that you guys are working hard on that. Really do want to emphasize, you know, even with some of the struggles that childcare centers can have with resources, you know, full 81% of childcares are using a 3-star curriculum, which is a huge milestone, and we're really proud of that. And then lastly, towards the right, Early Start are showing overall they're doing somewhere between schools and childcare, but we're also seeing improvement across every program type. Okay. One last little thing I just we wanted to end this section on is, what does access to quality look like across the state? This is something that we've been talking about more and more this year, and we know many of you guys are aware of. The results that we just went over are, you know, they speak for themselves, that kids are getting some great care. But we also know that the age groups that are being served are pretty lopsided. So when we look at this graph right here, you know, what we're seeing is that our youngest learners, infants, about 97% of infants that would qualify for public funds are not receiving any kind of care through public funds. It gets a little bit better as you go to older age groups, but 93% of 1-year-olds, 90% of 2-year-olds. It's really not until 3-year-olds that we start seeing a really big drop. But still, about 2/3 of 3-year-olds we're not quite reaching yet with public funds. We know that efforts are being made. Of course, we've talked about upcoming funding opportunities that both us and you guys I know are excited about. But we just want to keep in mind that the ultimate goal is for every age group to be receiving access to high quality care for families that want it. And we're looking forward to seeing how we can get those numbers down and start making them look a little bit more like the 3- and 4-year-olds that we serve now.
All right, great. Thank you, Gray. I'm going to step back in and talk a little bit about supporting improvements and next steps. So this is a slide that we share with you regularly. You've probably seen this before, but we just want to make sure that you have it available. We'll also be distributing the webinar, so you'll actually be able to go in and go to these links if you don't already have them. But we just want to remind you of some supports that are in place for all sites, but especially for sites that you're struggling to support improvement in. So of course, Louisiana has a curriculum initiative. So child care centers have access to that and should take advantage of that to purchase Tier 1 curriculum if they have not already done so. I believe the rule for that is that a child care center can access the curriculum initiative every year. So even if they've purchased a Tier 1 curriculum kit in the past through the initiative, they can continue to do so that more and more of their classrooms have access to a Tier 1 curriculum if they don't already have Tier 1 curriculum in every classroom. Then, of course, there's robust support provided by resource and referral agencies and mental health consultation. So be sure that if you're not already doing this, that you're connecting child care centers with R&Rs in your region and mental health consultants. Reach out to us if you have any questions about that. We'll be happy to help make connections or make sure that you're connecting your sites to the supports that are available to them. And then I just want to also note that the ancillary certificate became a requirement. So here are also some resources to support that. I want to talk a little bit about site improvement planning for this year. So Gray already talked in depth about what site improvement planning looked like last year. But we also want to share that this process is continuing in the 2019-2020 school year based on the scores from last year. So already 66 low-performing sites were notified of their mandated or recommended participation in site improvement planning. So 22 sites were mandated by policy, and then 44 sites for other reasons, either very low third-party scores or sites that were low on one particular domain. They were recommended. They are not required to participate, but as we saw in the data earlier, this process has been really successful. So we want to get as many sites this support as possible. So these sites were assigned a regional field support consultant, and the field support consultants have already reached out to begin this year-long process of developing an improvement plan. Also, these sites will be prioritized for resources that are not explicitly included in this improvement planning process. So they'll be prioritized for resource and referral support and coaching, curriculum support, and mental health consultation. Then I just want to end on next steps. So again, this is information that you've had in the past, but we've gone through and updated all of this to be aligned to the 2018-2019 release. So on our website and linked here, when you have this webinar in your email, you'll be able to follow this link, and there are some documents that should be helpful, especially when you're working with sites who are trying to interpret their performance profiles. So there's a site performance profile key that really breaks down each component of the performance profile and an accompanying guide. There's the same thing for the network level performance profile. We also have performance profile FAQs. That's a really meaty, detailed, kind of in the weeds document that explains exactly how performance profiles are calculated. So if you're, really wanting to understand the mechanics and the methodology behind all of this, or if you have folks asking questions about that, I would direct you to that resource. We also have the performance profile calculator that by now you've probably used to calculate site performance profiles based on preliminary data. And then, of course, we also have a document called the 5 Tips for Site that we would recommend you distribute to sites that guides them through what they should be doing as a result of this performance profile release. There's also a school and center performance communications toolkit that you can use in your media releases or communicating to sites how they're performing. So I encourage that you take advantage of some of these resources that are available. And then last, and this is primarily directed toward lead agencies, but we just want to make sure that you're aware of some upcoming opportunities. So by now, we hope that all of the lead agencies have heard about Super App, but if not, Super App is this school system planning process that school systems are using to submit an application for all of their competitive and formula funding. This will be released next week with some kickoff events. This year, for the first time, there's early childhood components included in Super App, which we're hoping is an opportunity to sort of elevate the work that you all are doing so that it becomes one of the school system priorities. And performance profile data should be used as a part of that, completing that component, those components of Super App. The next thing that I just want to make sure everyone's aware of is Ready Start Network pilot. So if you are a community network that's not currently participating in cohort 1, cohort 2, or Get Ready, you should begin considering what this means for you and whether you're ready to apply to become a Ready Start network. You should use the performance profile data to help identify areas of need so that you can really start thinking about what this means for your community. The next Ready Start application will be released in February of next year. Both of these topics we'll be discussing in length next week and the following week at the Early Childhood Collaborative. Okay, so now I'm going to pause for questions. You can either unmute and ask your question that way, or you can type into the group chat. While we're waiting on questions, I also just want to make a final announcement. So as you may have seen in your email earlier this week, Gray, who's been so gracious to help me facilitate this webinar today, this will be his last official department webinar. He is departing. He will be transitioning out of his role at the department and moving to Iowa. Here are some email addresses for folks that you should reach out to regarding some of the areas that he was your primary touch point for in the past. So during this transition, if you have questions that come up about the portal or error corrections or appeals, we're going to ask that you reach out to Danita Walker. For questions about child count, we're going to ask you to reach out to Lindsay. And then any questions about performance profile data, direct your questions to me. Gray, do you want to say anything?
No, not a ton, other than thanks everyone, appreciate it a lot. If I missed, this actually is probably worth mentioning, if I missed an email from you in the last week, it's been a bit of a race here to get everything done. I apologize, and you should definitely resend it to either Danita, Lindsay, or Taylor so that you definitely get your question answered. I don't want to they will not be able to go through my inbox and find all the things that I no doubt failed to get back to you on. So other than that, thanks a lot. Appreciate your all's patience with me as I learned a lot from you guys, and keep on keeping on.
All right, well, thank you all so much. And if there's no questions, we can go ahead and end early, but I just want to reiterate that if questions do emerge in the next few days, as you have the chance to really dig into your performance profile data and have conversations with superintendents or others, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. We're going to try to resolve any issues that come up as quickly as possible. So just send me an email or give me a call and we'll try to get it worked out. Thank you all so much. This has been a tremendously successful year, and we're excited about what this next year has in store. Take care.